Taking your real estate business from the $100,000 a year mark to $500,000 a year is actually a little bit easier than you might think. I'm going to share a two-part framework that you can rinse and repeat and recycle over and over and over to grow your business from 100 to 500,000 and honestly way beyond that. You've already built a really solid foundation and now it is time for you to really grow upon that foundation. So in this video, I'm going to break down the things that I personally did to grow way beyond this mark to sell over $1.1 million in just my first 2 years in the business, starting from scratch. But I'm also going to add in the things that I would change knowing what I know now. Here's a warning for you. If you are not already at the $100,000 mark, this video is not for you. I have a different video that I would say to go click over to right now if you want to learn to go to your first 100,000 and then save this video, come back to it later. All right, so here's the structure of the video is I'm going to go one over what I did to do 350,000 in my first year and then scale that to 800,000 in GCI in my second year. And this is my personal production, not my team. And then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what I would change knowing what I know now. And by the way, if you like this higher level of content, go ahead and comment down below the other things you'd like to hear as well too. Okay, so getting to your first $100,000 is very heavily dependent on doing the work, right? You know you have to generate leads, you have to have conversations, you're setting appointments, and you're closing deals, you're getting contracts signed, right? That is what your first $100,000 looks like, is getting used to doing the basics in real estate. Now, the best thing I can tell you about going from 100 to 5,000 or whatever this range is, when I'm talking about doubling, tripling, 5xing your business, it doesn't mean you have to do 5 times the work. That's the best part about this. However, it does mean you have to change from thinking of it as a job to thinking of it as a business. And that is going to be the thing that's going to level you up to this whole new level. And again, this is easier than you might think. I have found that real estate agents get stuck for one of two reasons, and this is the whole concept of this video. Number one is that they completely run out of time. Number two is that they cannot scale their lead generation. So right now, comment down below where you are at. Is you're an agent that is stuck and you can't make more money because you just don't have enough time to get everything done that needs to happen? Or is it because you can't scale your lead generation, you're stuck at a certain point? So I'm going to solve both of these with all of my experience, both personal and what I've learned from watching a lot of other agents. And I'm dealing with this right now with several agents on my team have gone in their first couple of years making multiple 6 figures, and now they're getting stuck, and I have agents in each one of these different categories. So I'm going to break down all of these different things, but first we're going to start with when you're stuck on time. Now I have a ton of notes over here, so if you see me looking off screen, I want to make sure I don't miss any of this stuff because it is all really important. And by the way, this video is going to be incredibly tactical on the things that I would do in my different pieces of advice. I'm going to try to get through it as much as possible, but I don't want to make the video too long. Now, the first thing we're going to tackle in this video is the agents that are stuck in they don't have enough time in their business. So I've got 2 things that I'm going to suggest here. So the first thing I'm going to talk about here is your income producing activities. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot. So number one is outsourcing your low dollar per hour activities. Yes, this is probably going to mean that you're going to need to, in some capacity, hire help. If your team or brokerage doesn't support you in these different ways, this is where you are probably going to need to go and outsource this, whether it's hiring a virtual assistant, hiring a part-time assistant, hiring some sort of a production partner. But the first thing you need to take off your plate is the administrative kind of nonsense that we have to do in the business. This is the paperwork. For example, if you are not already outsourcing your transaction coordinator, if you're not outsourcing your marketing and design, your listing photography and videographer, anything that does not directly make you money, these are things you have to outsource right away. If you're doing your own TC work, that is a complete waste of your time. Even if in our market we're paying $500 per file for TC, it's going to take you way more time to do that, and that time is taking you away from selling and making more money. Remember, this whole section here is for the agents that are struggling because they don't have enough time. Now, if you're watching this and you're saying, well, I do have time, I just can't scale my lead generation, we're going to get there. Still pay attention to this part because this is going to become important for you after we solve your problem. My advice for you here is that you should be spending 80% of your time on income producing activities and 20% of the time on the working on the business or doing the like what I call the nonsense activities, right? The paperwork and the stuff that just has to get done, scheduling and all that. So that's number one, is the administrative stuff. Now let's move on to number two, which is fixing the fact that you can only be in one place at a time. Now there's a couple of different ways to do this. I'm going to talk about 3 different options. You can hire a licensed assistant, you can hire a showing agent, or you can hire what I call a production partner. Now, if you're in this in-between growing stage, understand what I said earlier is that we're gonna have to stop treating this as a job and start treating it as a business, and businesses have expenses. So let me give you a story from my first year. I mentioned I did $350,000 in GCI my very first year in the business, and I scaled that to $800,000 in my second year. And one of the things that scared me the most was hiring my first assistant. We had about $100,000 in GCI pending, and I was hiring my first assistant that was gonna cost me about $3,000 per month. Now, it terrified me to hire this first assistant that was gonna cost me $3,000 a month, and in hindsight, it's crazy because I had $100,000 in pending GCI to close the next 45 days. I could have paid for her for the next 3 years. And what happened was when I hired this assistant, I was working roughly 90 hours a week at this point, maybe 100, maybe 80. And when I hired this person, they took 40 hours a week of work that I was doing off of my plate onto their plate. So I added 40 more hours of income producing activities. And guess what happened? Our income doubled. The amount of deals that I was bringing in, the amount of sales, the income producing activities that I could do literally doubled because I had twice as much time. Now, here's a pro tip for you. If you hire in help and you do not replace those 40 hours with income producing activities, that will not increase your income. It might increase your quality of life. So depending on where you're at in your business, you can make that decision. But I imagine you're watching this because you want to make more money and you want to scale your business. You have to replace that time with more income producing activities, and don't just sit back and say, oh, they're doing all that stuff. Now I can go golfing, I can go do whatever. That's not going to help you grow your income, at least not as fast. Now, this person does not have to be licensed, but if you need to be in 2 places at once, they can be. So I'll leave the personal assistant on number 1 that we talked about as getting rid of the low dollar per hour activities. That's what I did. If I could go back in time, I would have hired a licensed assistant that could have done 20 or 30 hours of the nonsense work and 10 hours of showings or stuff like that for me per week because they were licensed. That's one thing I would change. Now, number 2, let's talk about what a showing agent looks like. I believe there's really 2 different models for a showing agent, and this is somebody who's going to help you show property to the buyers or do runner activities on your listings. The 2 different things that I would say here are you can pay them like an hourly rate or $1 per door, if you will. If they're going to show 5 houses, you're going to pay them $200 or whatever it might be. $50 a door is pretty standard in my market. Or you might pay them a percentage of your GCI. I like paying a percentage of GCI, even though it's probably more money. I feel like it gets people more invested, and I'm only paying if we're closing deals. So if you don't want to be shoving out a bunch of cash before you close deals, this works better. Totally up to you. If you want to make all the money possible, the $1 per door maybe make you a little bit more. I personally like the percentage of GCI, somewhere in the 5 to 10% range. So what happens here, this is how I did it, and I would have done it the same way knowing what I know now. I would continue doing all of my income producing activities. I'd be setting appointments. I would go on the first appointment with my showing agent, and I would make sure that I'm winning the business and that they knew that this person was my assistant. Now, when it came down to we earned the business, we got a buyer broker agreement signed, I did the consultation and got the agreement signed. Now I would say, okay, Sally is going to go ahead and take you from here, and when we get to the point of writing offers, I'll get back involved and negotiate that deal. Or Bob is going to take you, whoever your showing agent is. This person is going to help you out going on the tours. If I'm able to, I want to make sure that we're able to service you as best as possible, right? This type of scripting so that you are earning the business, you're winning the business, and then your assistant is showing them all of the homes, and then you get back involved to negotiate the deal. They write the offer for you. This allows them to go out with somebody that you've already earned the business for, and then you can go out with a new lead where you do need to earn the business. And then you can be showing twice as many properties at the same time. Same thing for a listing appointment. If you're gonna go on a listing appointment, you bring your assistant with you, you give them a whole bunch of to-dos, and then they can go through and do the to-dos, while maybe you go on another listing appointment by yourself, give them the to-dos separately, or they come with you on all the appointments and then they do all of the work after that, meaning they put it on the MLS, they get it together, they get their photography scheduled, all the things that don't make you money. My whole point here is you need to be spending at least 80% of your time on your income producing activities. So this is what a showing agent would look like. is you're directing traffic from here to there, but they're not like married to you on all deals. Now, if you're below that $150,000, maybe $200,000 a year mark, those are the two routes that I'd recommend going. But if you get above that $200,000, getting towards $300,000 mark, and you want to double your business, I really like the production partner model is what we call it. Now, this is where you are marrying up to your showing agent. They're going to make a percentage of every deal you do, and any deals that they also do are your deals. Now, if your GCI is below the $300,000 mark, those first two options, the licensed assistant and the showing agent, that would be the direction that I'd recommend going. Once you get to the $300,000 mark, I really like this production partner model a lot more. It creates more commitment, but it also adds a salesperson to your personal business. So here's how the production partner model works. You will basically be marrying your showing agent. So this person will be attached to all of your deals. And they're also an additional salesperson. That's why we call them a production partner and not a licensed assistant. So once you get to that 300,000 mark, usually this compensation model, it depends on how much GCI you have and how much money they need to make, obviously. But usually it's something like 15% of all the deals the both of you do is their compensation. So if you're making $300,000 and they're getting paid 15%, that would be $45,000, right? That's kind of like the base mark for this to start to make sense for both parties, because this is likely to be, the production partner is likely to be a junior agent that wants to really learn from an expert, and they want to see how it's done and learn a ton. And maybe they stay for a long time, and maybe they go off after 2 years and do it on their own because you gave them all the tools they needed. But the point is, this person's going to be a salesperson for you. So they make 15% on every deal you do, but they make 15% on every deal they do, meaning you get the rest. And that's how we run this model. Now, if I could go back, once I hit that 300,000 mark, I would have instantly brought in a production partner, and I would have honestly probably tripled my income if I would have done that. And then you can scale this to where you have multiple production partners. But here's the point. This person's a salesperson, not a licensed assistant. So you're going to do more of the closing income producing activities and less of the higher up the funnel. So they might be able to go on the showings themselves, and you might only need to do the consultations to get a buyer broker agreement signed. You'll still go on all the listing appointments because that's a higher skill activity than a buyer showing is. But you should be able to train this person to do exactly what you do so that they can get you teed up to do the buyer strategy session, buyer's consultation, whatever you call it, to get your buyer agreement signed. And then they can do everything from there. They can also manage your escrows, all of those things as well too. So to recap this, for the first thing we're talking about is you have to get your time back. So the first thing is getting rid of the administrative stuff. So a licensed assistant is something that's fantastic to start with. I would have, if I could go back, I would have done a licensed assistant so that this person could have also done real estate agent activities like tours as well too. The second thing is a showing agent, which is somebody that is a licensed agent that is going to be showing properties for you. And the third is after you get to that 300,000 mark, really strongly considering that production partner model. This is going to get you 40, 50, 60 hours back in your week. And if you dump that much more time into income producing activities, I guarantee you're going to dramatically increase your income. Now, if your concern is, which I understand, I'm going to be spending a lot of money. If I'm paying this person 50,000, that's 50,000 that I'm not making. That's right. But if you double your income from 200 to 400 and you had to pay 50 to do that, you made an additional $150,000. And that is why you do it. You're gonna have to leverage your time. And like I said in the beginning, this is treating your job and turning it into trading it like a business. And to get to this to where you can find out if it makes sense or what to do, here's kind of the framework that I would follow is you need to find your hourly rate. So here's the formula. Let's give the example and you can plug in your own numbers. If you're working 60 hours a week and you're making $150,000 per year, I think that's a pretty standard, reasonable amount. So that means there's 52 weeks in a year, and divided by $150,000 means you make $2,880 per week. And if you're working 60 hours a week, that means your hourly rate comes out to $48 per hour, which is not bad. But this allows you to identify that if you're doing work that you could hire somebody for $15, $10, $20 an hour, or even a virtual assistant for $3 an hour, it means that that is literally costing you money. So all of these activities that you are doing that are spending so much time on things that aren't making you any money, even if you pay somebody to do that, you are literally making more money, assuming you replace it with income producing activities. So I told you about the story of what happened when I hired my assistant. She took 40 hours a week off of my plate of the nonsense, and I doubled basically my income producing activities, which doubled the business, which was fantastic. But what happened after that was I got capped out again. And what I did then was we hired an in-house transaction coordinator where I could pretty much write a deal on a napkin, hand it over to my transaction coordinator, and they really managed the deal from there on out, and I just did the negotiation points of the deal. This bought me back probably another 20 or 30 hours a week because we were doing so many deals, and this allowed me to again double my income. Now we had 2 people that were on payroll. And again, if I could go back in time, I would have had a production partner where that may not have been necessary, but at some point it definitely would have been. But my point was, I kept taking things off of my plate that were lower dollar per hour activities, and I raised my income dramatically. And this is how I got to $800,000 or more in my second year of sales. Here's a pro tip as well too, is you're never gonna feel ready to make the first hire, and you probably also won't feel ready to make the second hire. So just realize that while you're going through. Look at your business like a business person, and if the math makes sense, you're not gonna feel comfortable, but you know that it's the right thing to do. Okay, so that was the first chunk of the 2. Remember, the first one is you do not have enough time. So this is what I would follow as kind of the framework of the guidelines in order for you to get your time back. And then when you start doubling your income producing activities, you're gonna make more money. And then you might run into problem number 2, which is you can't keep scaling your lead generation. So here is the path for scaling your lead gen. Now, if scaling your lead generation sounds rather simple, it's because it is. Here's my advice, and I just got off a coaching call with one of my agents on my team yesterday, and this is the exact conversation we had around scaling lead generation. All right, there's 2 points to this section. First of all, you're gonna look at your business and you're gonna figure out what is the thing that you're doing that's already working. Now, this is gonna be agnostic to whatever your lead source is, whether you're buying leads, whether you're doing open houses or cold calling, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. This is the framework to think through this by. So you're gonna look at your business, you're gonna figure out what you're already doing that works. I would take your number 1 lead source for all the deals you've done to get to the point you're at now, and figure out what the thing is that works the best. All right, so there's really one point here that I'm gonna kind of break down into 2 separate ones. This is a framework that I've learned from Alex Hormozi, going to his workshops and learning how they scale their businesses. If you're not watching his content, I would highly recommend it, especially at this level. So this framework is what he calls more, better, new. So number 1, first and foremost, is you're gonna look at your business, you're gonna figure out the lead source that's already working. You're gonna look at that and you're gonna ask yourself, can I do more of this? Now, if it's open houses and you're doing 2 open houses every weekend, can you do them longer, right? If you're cold calling to get leads and you're calling for 2 hours a day, can you call for 5 hours a day, right? Like, you're just gonna literally do more of what is already working, and that could double your lead gen very easily, maybe more than that. Now, if you can't do any more of what you're already doing, which 99% of the time, a real estate agent can just do more work to generate more leads. Now, if you can't, then we move to better. So of what you're doing, that's the biggest lead source, can you do it better? Now, a 10% improvement, a 20% improvement might make a huge difference if you can't do it anymore. Now, once you've done it more and better, then you go back and say, like, can I do more of it better? Right? And this is where most agents need to just continue through this cycle, is ramp up the amount of work that we're doing and then work on doing it better. I've run into this problem tons of times in my career where I try to make things better before I do them enough. And I've just gone the complete opposite way, as I just do way more before I try to make it better. I made content for 1.5 years on my webcam on my computer with no background before I got the lights and the camera and made a fancy background, because I was terrible on camera in the beginning. I could have wasted a bunch of time putting all this stuff together. It doesn't make sense. So just do more first and then make it better once you can't do any more. Okay, so let me tie this in with a story from when I was in production. So my primary lead generation was open houses. I did an open house almost every Friday and every Saturday and Sunday, and I started doing them from 11 to 6. And then what happened was I generated a lot of leads, and I started having to trim my open houses down shorter and shorter and shorter, until honestly I didn't even have time to do open houses anymore, or at least not as often. So my lead generation was slowly going down, even though I was super busy going on a lot of appointments. And what happened was I had to add another lead source to replace open houses. Knowing what I know now, I would have brought in a licensed assistant or a production partner, depending on where you're at in your business. And I would have been able to keep myself at open houses, which is the most profitable thing you can do because it's totally free. I would have been able to do that much longer to make way more profit before I went on to what number 2 is, which is adding a new lead source. So the reason I'm breaking this up into 2 totally different sections is to really drive the point home of the importance of more, better, new. It's almost like this. You do more, and then you do it better, and then you do more, better. And then if you can't do any more, any better, then you do new. And it is such a separate thing because I see all the time real estate agents that'll get some traction on something and then run into a little bit of difficulty and just go straight to something new. I'm super guilty of this. I was talking with that agent that I coached on my team yesterday, and I shared that I probably wasted about $700,000 on new. And I ended up just going back to doing more, better. And 4.5 years later, I'm still just doing more and better. And that is what has grown the business. So let's dive in to number 2, which is adding a new lead source. Again, I have a lot of different notes here. Ideally, what you do for your next lead source is a bolt-on to what you're already doing. So I used open houses for what I did. And what I actually added on was online lead generation. Online lead generation and open houses have almost nothing connected. Now, I could have been doing open houses in the same area that I was buying leads. So I would have been buying buyer or seller leads or generating buyer and seller leads while doing open houses in the area. Could have done that. But what have probably made more sense was farming the neighborhood that I was doing open houses in. I did an open house early in my career, and I was in the same neighborhood for like 12 weeks straight with signs every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I knew almost the whole neighborhood because I did so many open houses in there. I held somebody else's listing until I got my own listing in there. And then I totally dropped the ball on farming that neighborhood just because I didn't have somebody telling me what I should be doing. And that's why I make this type of content to help you. So if I could go back to my 25-year-old self, my first year in the business, it was a no-brainer to start farming this neighborhood. And I just didn't. So my first piece of advice is whatever your current lead generation source is, find something that bolts onto it as closely as possible. Another thing that I could have done if open houses is your thing, I think it's a great one, so I'll give you another example, is if I was doing open houses, I could have started circle prospecting around where I was doing my open houses as a second lead source. Phone calls are way more high leverage than doing open houses because you can really only do so many open houses. I mean, I guess you can do them every day, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday was probably the most efficient times to do them, certainly the weekends. But I could have been calling around every open house that I did. I could have been saying, hey, did you see this house just got listed? Did you see it just sold? I'm hosting an open house. You should stop by. Do you want a market analysis? Right, looking for seller lead generation around my open houses. That would have also made more sense. So when you're talking about adding your second lead generation source, if you cannot do it anymore and you can't do it any better, add a second lead gen source that is closely defined or closely aligned, I should say, with your current lead gen source. This is my best piece of advice. And I mentioned in the beginning of this video that I would share what I actually did, which was I found online lead generation. So I'll explain what that looked like. So I was doing open houses, like I said, every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and just got trimmed down and down and down. And then once I realized I really wasn't going to be able to do open houses anymore, at least not nearly in the same capacity, I found online lead generation. And very quickly, we dove into buying Zillow leads. We became a Zillow Premier agent. We were buying $1,200 a month and realizing that we were spending $1,200 and making $20,000. And we doubled that. And then we were spending $2,500. And then we were spending $5,000. And then we were spending $10,000. And they were spending $25,000. And we did that until we got onto the Zillow Flex program, which doubled our lead flow. And then we moved that $25,000 into something else, which was realtor.com. And then we started spending another $10,000 over here. So we were spending a huge budget. And my point for saying this is I'm not bragging by any stretch of the imagination. I would have spent way more money if I could have on these different things. My point is I could have done it way more profitably by the lessons that I've shared with you so far. But what I was able to do is I was able to take all of my time on income producing activities because I wasn't physically myself, I wasn't lead generating. I was credit card lead generating. So the leads would come in, and then my income producing activities was call, text, emailing everybody that came in, setting appointments, going on appointments, And what I did was, this is really the birth of Onyx Homes, of building out a real estate sales team. So we had too many leads for me personally to handle, so we started bringing on real estate agents to our team and building the team that way. But if I wanted to do it way more profitably, I would have had production partners, and I would have built a team around me, and I would have just kept plowing and plowing and plowing all my time back into income producing activities. Now, your vision is what's going to come important in the future, which I have a totally different video talking about business planning and vision. But I wanted to build a real business, which is why we went the team route versus going through the production partner route. But if you want to be a real estate agent, this is definitely the route that I'd go, is production partners and scaling your activities. You do not need to follow my path by any stretch of the imagination. And honestly, the credit card is the last thing that I recommend agents pull out. I think there's a lot of other things where you do not need to just go spend a ton of money on lead generation. But you can follow this two-step framework. One, maximizing your income producing activities and getting your time back. And number two is scaling your lead generation by bolting on or doing more of what you're already doing. And then honestly, you just continue to rinse and repeat this over and over and over. So here's what this looks like. If you're in the boat where you're out of time and you do not have that time, and now you come in and you bring on a licensed assistant, you bring on just a regular assistant or a production partner, and then you get twice as much time back, and you're going to start making way more income producing activities. And all of a sudden, time isn't the problem anymore. And maybe it turns to, shoot, now I don't have enough leads. I can do the work, I have the time to do it, but now I can't scale my lead generation. Well, then you move over and solve problem two that we just talked about, which is how to scale your lead generation. Then you're probably gonna run out of time again. Now you go back to leveling up and fixing this level of time. And what happens is, you've got time over here and you've got your lead gen over here. So when you run out of time, you level up that skill set to up here, and then your lead generation also has to level up, right? So you fix this problem, and then you move over and fix your lead generation problem. Well, now you're leveling up and you're fixing your time problem again at a way higher level than where it was at before. And this is how you grow a business, is you find the constraint, you fix that, and then you keep growing the business. If you're liking this type of content, I have a free school community that you are welcome to join that goes way deeper on these, has a lot of trainings, and this is where you get direct access to me and my team as well too. You can go to onyxhomes.com/school, learn more about it, and join the community. But inside of it, you're gonna get all the courses that I share and the trainings that I share with my team. You also get direct access to me, my marketing manager, and hundreds of other agents that are in your position as well too, that are looking to grow the business. So if you want to join that, go to onyxhomes.com/school, drop your information, and we'll see you inside. All right, so if you're following the framework in this video and you're fixing your time constraint and you're generating more leads, the next thing you're probably going to run into is how to nurture a database that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the absolute #1 best way that we do this with our business is through our weekly email newsletter. I send 100,000 emails every single month, and I consistently get 40 to 50% open rates on all of my emails. So if you want to learn how to build and scale your email list, I made a full video for you over here. Go ahead and click that, and I'll see you in the next video. If you like this one, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you over in that next video. Thanks for watching.